Chapter 6: Support Networks. This time will test our vocation, our creativity, our resilience, and that capacity to adapt that can only be awakened in company. Together. It will be a complex and exhausting challenge, but together it will be somewhat less so. Families, teachers, and children, girls, we are in this together. Let's find a way to accompany each other, to weave bonds despite this unbearable distance, to network and support each other, to come out stronger. Perhaps better. Because we are also facing an opportunity, perhaps unique, to review our priorities in the classroom. Can we really teach letters, sums, the periodic table, as if nothing were happening out there? Is this not the precise, precious moment we have been waiting for to make room for true learning that is meaningful, valuable, integral? Let us leave the doors open for life to come in and out of our classrooms and allow children to discover it, moved by their interest and wonder. Education should never move away from what is important: caring, sharing, everyday life. A living, active, authentic pedagogy, by and for life. You will do your best, securing the urgent to make room for the important. And when you can't do it anymore, trust that there will be a human net to fall back on. Building social support networks, how not to face this alone. These have been complex years, with big and small crises: economic, work-related, relational. On a personal level, with fears and anxieties that seemed justified by a pandemic. On a family level, we have found ourselves dealing with the daily tasks of raising a child more alone than ever, without being able to count on grandmothers, uncles, cousins, neighbors to support and sustain everything that raising a human being entails. At the educational level, we have found ourselves in a desperate attempt to maintain the link and education through screens. What seemed like an opportunity thanks to technology turned against us with social inequalities, teacher precariousness, and many limitations in family support. Now, in a special way, we perceive the importance of a human tribe so that children can grow up protected and accompanied as they need, of a school community that fosters the human bond, the feeling of belonging, and equal opportunities for all. A certain militancy is necessary to create these concrete and symbolic spaces in which to feel safe, to break down if necessary, and to rebuild oneself through the eyes and words of others who live or have lived through the same thing and can help us regain confidence in ourselves, and in life. Hopefully, we can put life back at the center and give priority to weaving these networks with our current reality and with what we have at hand. Biology of the link. Telomeres are the ends of chromosomes. Their main function is to provide structural stability to chromosomes, preventing them from tangling and sticking together, and they are key to cell division. For all these reasons, they are closely related to cancer, abnormal cell division. Telomeres are the clocks of cells, as they set the number of times a cell can divide before it dies. They are the chronometer of cellular aging. It has been observed that the lower the levels of the enzyme telomerase, the smaller the telomere size, and therefore the fewer possible divisions of a cell, the greater the risk of aging and disease. Negative habits, such as stress, diet, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, sleep problems, impact telomere length. But the most surprising thing is that people who feel lonely have lower telomerase levels with a consequent decrease in telomere length. In contrast, people who share their emotions with each other and understand each other experience higher telomerase levels, and a consequent lengthening of telomeres. This is one science-based example, among many, of how science supports the idea that it is in human nature to knit together. In fact, evolution is not about survival or the strongest, but about those most willing to cooperate. Weaving the web. Characteristics of a support network. We live in a clearly Western society based on competition and capitalism, where the individual takes precedence over the collective, which is contrary to our very nature. However, society is an organism in which we interact and depend on social relationships. From this holistic vision, and with the support of science, we need to weave support networks that allow us to meet basic needs in order to feel secure and experience well-being. The people we rely on and support form our social support networks. These networks exist in everyday life, such as family, work, school, and community, and they are permanent connections. Networks can grow or weaken as people in them change their relationships over time. Social support networks are defined as the set of relationships that integrate a person with their social environment, or with people with whom they establish solidarity and communication links to address specific needs. Networks can be reduced or expanded based on the material, physical, or emotional well-being of their members, as well as their involvement and active participation in strengthening societies. They are in constant motion and consist of people, in any number from 2 upwards, who share interests, principles of citizenship, and principles of reciprocity, non-violence, and voluntary action. The types of support provided by these networks include the following: emotional support, affection, trust, companionship, empathy, recognition, and active listening. This can be expressed through visits, phone calls, invitations, hugs, etc. Instrumental support, assistance with transportation, household chores, shopping, caregiving, or companionship. Cognitive support, exchange of experiences, information, advice to understand or remember a situation, etc. Material support, financial assistance, accommodation, food, clothing, donations, etc. Furthermore, networks can be classified as formal or informal based on the types of support they provide. Informal networks consist of personal and community networks, which can be further divided into primary and secondary networks. 1. Primary networks, composed of family, friends, and neighbors. They serve functions of socialization, care, affection, reproduction, and economic status, among others. 2. Secondary networks include recreational groups, civil and social organizations operating in the community, religious organizations, work or study relationships. Some of their functions are social companionship, emotional support, cognitive and counseling guidance, social regulation, provision of material help and services, and the opportunity to access new contacts. 3. Formal networks, on the other hand, consist of public sector organizations at different levels of government, federal, state, and municipal, which provide guidance, information, training, health promotion and care, food, advocacy, recreation, and support. Social support networks share the following characteristics. 1. There is a sense of solidarity among members. 2. They are heterogeneous and inclusive, encompassing people of any age, gender, economic status, beliefs, etc. 3. They act autonomously, at the discretion of the networks themselves. 4. They aim to achieve concrete objectives based on emerging needs. 5. There is reciprocity, with giving and receiving in proportion to the circumstances of each person or group. 6. There is interaction between members and external elements, society, and institutions. 7. They are adaptable and changeable, renewing and adapting to environmental needs over time. 8. They are decisive, generating responses and solutions to various situations. Social support networks are crucial for people's well-being, providing the following benefits. 1. Continued participation in the transformation of society. 2. Sense of belonging, integration, value, care, and esteem. 3. An alternative to depression, isolation, and neglect. 4. Reduced risk of abuse. 5. Affection, companionship, reciprocal support, and enhanced self-esteem. 6. Maintenance of independence and autonomy. Tools for developing support networks include conscious communication. If we take into account the characteristics of social networks, we realize that they refer to basic keys for the well-being of any organism and the basic needs to foster a conscious and non-violent communication: empathy, respect, autonomy, motivation, reciprocity, communication, and evolution. But let's go into a little more detail on the subject of communication, as it is one of the most powerful tools we have in terms of forming and managing support networks. Dynamic, connecting techniques to strengthen support networks. Depending on the phase. Group formation, creative presentation. Consolidation, cooperative games. Mainstay, communication. Transformation, characters and their variations roles. Dissolution, conflict management. Communication. Dynamic speaking in gibberish. Purpose, self-knowledge. Communication with others. In a moment I want them to start talking in gibberish to each other. Make any sound you want, that sounds vaguely like speaking a language, but not words in any language you know. Don't try to carry on a meaningful conversation, just make a guirigay. Look into your partner's eyes while doing this. Become aware of how you feel while doing this. Now finish the gibberish. Close your eyes. and get in touch with your physical experience. Open your eyes and tell your partner what you feel, what you experienced while you were mumbling gibberish to each other. If you have shared fantasies of ridicule or catastrophe, start the exercise again by putting aside feelings of self-consciousness. Communication is not only verbal. Words constitute much of the power you have to express and communicate, to think and, consequently, to create the events of your life. They are sound vibrations that tend to manifest their physical equivalent. Like seeds in the ground, they contain the potential to take root in your mind and spontaneously generate thought forms of a similar vibration. Your life will reflect the kind of seeds that have taken root in your mind. Language is important in the form of your words. And in the inner resonance itself, any phrase has great evocative power. For example, a mantra can be enslaving or liberating. Everything we perceive remains imprinted, all repressed expressions remain internalized, however small they may be, although the damage is not so much the repression itself as the lack of awareness of it. Words affect your emotions, they can cheer you up, bring you down, cast a spell. They can transfer emotional poison to you. A single word can trigger a whole emotional reaction in you. Once you are aware of their power, you will find it easier to choose them carefully, to speak with integrity and to say only what you mean. Unconsciously, we use commonly used, mechanically learned cultural phrases that are not in our favor. For example, I'm too old, too slow, too dumb for this. I'm sick of doing that. I'm dying to. I can't afford. I'm not capable of. I'll be an imbecile. If you criticize or judge yourself, it is because you were taught to do so. You agreed to treat yourself that way and turned it into a habit. Now that you are aware of that agreement, you can break it and say words of praise, acceptance, and love to yourself. The love you feel for yourself is directly proportional to the quality and integrity of your words. The same goes for using them against others. You're a pain in the ass. You're useless. I'm going to kill you. Fuck you. Get lost, die, shut up. What an asshole. If you give out rubbish, poison, lies, you will receive rubbish, poison, and lies. If you speak the truth and offer love, you will get truth and love. You give what you get and you get what you give. Present attention and empathic listening. Dynamics, listening 5 minutes with bad practices and 5 minutes of empathic listening. Paying attention means being present with all 5 senses and concentrating on what your interlocutor is saying. To do this, you need to stop doing other things and free your mind from unfinished business, and any preconceived ideas about who is speaking to you or what you think they are going to say. Prejudices and assumptions are not good companions for this journey. Not recommended listening attitudes. Interrupting and cutting off speech and venting. Directing or using imperatives, tell me all about it. Interpret question, you don't want to. Correct, no, it didn't happen like that. Ask, when did this start? Lecturing, preaching, educating, this could be positive if. Advise, I think you should. Encourage, minimize, console, it's not your fault. Promise, everything will be fine. Compete, that's nothing, what happened to me? Pity, poor. Approve, it's very good what you are doing. Disapprove, judge, criticize, you are inept and have no idea what you are talking about. Insulting, threatening, you're a fool if you don't change. Divert the subject or ironize, this reminds me of a time. When one does not feel listened to, communication fails. Listening is welcoming without judging, evaluating, interpreting, reassuring, rejecting, labeling, without taking over their word. Listening is difficult, it requires an openness, a willingness to step outside oneself, to focus on understanding the world of the other, one's own reference system. Active listening is allowing the other to express herself more fully, and to understand herself. When I take up or summarize what she has just said, what I have understood or comprehended from what she has said, it means thinking and acting in a way that connects with her and she feels understood. To achieve this, the most basic and most important thing is to stop talking. We cannot listen while we are talking. If you tend to monopolize the conversation, you will hardly listen, especially if you are preparing for what you are going to say next. Don't be afraid of silences, respect them. It is important to identify your own emotions. In a conversation, emotions can surface in relation to your interlocutor. If you connect with that emotion and let go, you are no longer listening to her, you are listening to yourself. Be alert not to interrupt or finish sentences. Patience is fundamental in listening. Let your interlocutor take the time she needs to communicate. Sometimes it is our protagonism that does not tolerate the other person taking the lead. Pay attention to non-verbal communication. Listen also to what is not said, but is noticeable in gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice, volume and silences that speak for us. If our body language communicates that we are not interested, that we are bored or that we are in a hurry, our interlocutor will notice. Giving feedback. Active listeners use gestures and expressions to communicate that they are truly listening. They ask questions to invite the speaker to continue talking and to clarify any areas of confusion. Other ways to show that you are listening are to paraphrase what he or she says and to mirror what you hear. In short, listening is an art that can be learned by practicing it, detecting difficulties and ineffective habits in order to be able to intervene in them. The rewards of our efforts to improve our listening skills are enormous. We will avoid conflicts, our relationships will improve, we will be better communicators. And we will be listened to more. It is up to us to decide at what level of listening we want to spend most of our time. Conscious, assertive, and non-violent communication. Assertive language is saying what you want, when you want and to whom you want, honestly, without manipulation or reaction. I understand honesty as the exercise of asking yourself and recognizing the true intention behind your actions, and acting accordingly. Reaction is that which replaces conscious and chosen action. It is that closed and defensive response to a thought or concept that we cannot admit, that creates resistance and discomfort, because in some way it undermines our illusion of security. It can manifest itself as disturbance and generate an offensive or defensive attitude. If we look at these reactions, we can see what we are trying to protect ourselves from, what it is that we are afraid of, and so have the information to deal with it. The following outline is a tremendously useful tool, which, as Rosenberg suggests, it is even advisable to carry on a little printed card, which allows us to remember which type of communication we choose to revolutionize our lives. Observation, circumstantialism, goes to the situation. Concrete acts that we observe that are affecting us. Feeling, expressing what we feel in relation to what we observe. Needs, why I want, what I value or desire. This can include recognition of the other if it is real. Request, concrete, specific actions that we ask for to enrich our lives. Examples. When I saw the unscrubbed pots. Observation. I felt angry, feeling. Because I want to see the kitchen tidy. Needs, I understand that you find it hard to clean. Acknowledgement. We are going to revise the agreement we had. Request. Example. It bothers me to see the dirty socks balled up under the coffee table, because I need more order in the house we share. Would you be willing to pick up the socks and put them in the washing machine? We can put two maxims into practice in trying to maintain assertive relationships. Plants do not grow by pulling them up, they have to be watered, pampered, given light, warmth and patience, just like all relationships. At each meeting, try to leave the relationship better than it was. Assertive expression has to come from the heart, being very clear that the objective is to improve relations, seeking a response that satisfies us. Your attitude influences the attitude of the other. It can facilitate understanding or a defensive attitude. Every conflict is an opportunity to improve the relationship. If we avoid it, it is out of fear, and fear, when you look it in the face, becomes courage. It gives you strength. When you hide it, however, it grows. Stated weakness becomes strength, always knowing that avoidant silences get us nowhere, and conflicts are not for keeping. Better to use facilitative terms that do not put the other person in a position of inferiority, such as, I explain, instead of, do you understand me? It is also useful to ask for confirmation of our words, so that there are as few doubts as possible. It is also useful to repeat to your interlocutor what she has said, confirming that you have understood correctly. If we want to connect with each other, it is advisable to avoid anything that smacks of accusation or blame. 1. Petitions. The most complete and effective petitions, from a conscious approach, must have 4 ingredients. Positive language focused on what we want and not on what we don't want. In a concrete and specific way so that it can be satisfied, avoiding vague, abstract or ambiguous phrases. What is asked for must be achievable and negotiable. Accompanied by feelings and needs so that they don't seem like demands. Not in the form of a question, "Why don't you cut your hair?" The difference between request and demand becomes clear when our demand is denied and we accept it with empathetic understanding. Expressions of a request that entails a demand: I should, I would have, I deserve, I have reason, I have the right. Examples of types of non-conscious request and their positive and specific response. I want you to respect my privacy. I want you to knock on the door before you come in. I would like you to cook dinner more often. I would like you to cook dinner every Monday. I would like to get to know you better. I would like you to tell me if you would like to have lunch together once a week. You are driving too fast, slow down. I would like you not to drive over the speed limit. I would like you to have more confidence in yourself. I would like you to take a course to help you. I don't want you to drink any more. Expresses what he doesn't want. I want you to stay sober. 2. Receptions. When we do not want to receive, but to refuse, it is essential to free ourselves from the slavery of complacency and to learn to say no. And to do so, not to reject or oppose the other person, but to respect one's own desires and feelings. 4 options for receiving a violent message. For example, they throw this sentence at us: "You are the most self-centered person I have ever met. You are the most self-centered person I have ever met. You are the most self-centered person I have ever met." Blame us: "I should be more sensitive." Blaming the others: "You have no right to say that to me, you are the self-centered one." To perceive our own feelings and needs: "When you say that to me, I feel hurt because I would like you to recognize my efforts to take you into account." Empathic reception, perceiving the feelings and needs of others. Do you feel hurt because you need your preferences to be taken into account? Empathetic reception. Empathy is a respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. It involves being present, at some point emptying the mind and listening without judgment. Intellectual understanding or compassion is not empathy. Neither is thinking about what I would do in the same situation the other person is experiencing. It is about observing the other person's feelings, e.g., frustration, and exploring the moments when I feel frustration, to connect with the experience she is having. We can listen to what the other observes, feels, needs, and asks for. What do you say I have done? How do you feel? Why do you feel this way? What do you want me to do about it? When someone really listens to you without judging you, without trying to take responsibility for you or trying to change you, you feel something wonderful. When faced with a hostile situation in which we are feeling attacked, criticized, judged for attitudes or comments, or we observe a third person being attacked, we can start by asking for information and, at the same time, expressing our feelings and needs. Paraphrasing what the interlocutor says, as well as repeating emotionally charged messages, is useful to maintain contact and get the other person to connect with their feelings. From there, we can come closer to understanding their circumstances and make the appropriate decision about our possible intervention. Examples of types of non-empathic reception. How could I do something so stupid? A. Nobody is perfect, you are too hard on yourself. It gives encouragement. You don't realize I'm here. A. It's not true, I realize that. It expresses disagreement and defends itself. I'm disgusted by what I'm putting on weight. A. How about you go for a run? Counsel. When a family member comes unannounced, I feel invaded. A. I understand, I used to feel like that too. He speaks of his own feelings. Examples of types of empathic reception. You are not God. A. Are you frustrated because you would want me to admit that there are other ways of interpreting this issue? I am going crazy planning my daughter's wedding. The groom's family is not cooperating at all and they don't decide what they want. A. Do you feel nervous about the organization and would you appreciate it if they realized the complications their indecision brings? Let us be clear that behind all the words we have allowed to intimidate us, there are human beings with unmet needs asking us to contribute to their well-being. A difficult message is an opportunity to enrich someone's life. If we express our pain sincerely and without blame, we are likely to be heard. A. Sometimes, if we need to be defensive and have difficulty giving empathy, we can do the following. First, stop, breathe and offer empathy to ourselves. Second, shout without violence. Third, withdraw. 2. Gratitude. Like any other expression in conscious communication, gratitude should arise without obligation or consideration. It should be expressed from the desire to share the experience, as a transmission of what the gesture or support has meant to the recipient. It has nothing to do with a posture of approval or servility, but rather with putting positive evaluation, cooperation, and love first. Gratitude is to look at life with the joy of what we have been given, it is to look at it through the prism of love. Steps to express conscious gratitude. First, the action that contributed to our well-being. 2 degrees the feeling. 3 degrees the need was satisfied. When you said, I felt joyful and relieved. Because I was looking forward to connecting. Instead of ending the thank you with judgments about what the other person is like. For example, thank you, you are a genius. With these steps, we emphasize the responsibility for one's own experience, growing in understanding and encounter. Focus on an example of good practice in the education system. How to foster healthy relationships in the different systems, between peers, with the teacher, in the classroom, between teachers and with families, outside school. Make an ideal proposal. Systemic pedagogy brings a very special nuance to the teacher's view, regardless of the type of methodology used in the classroom, because it focuses on relationships and links rather than on people and their behavior taken individually. In this way, instead of looking at one child, he or she broadens his or her view to see the whole system of origin, father, mother, siblings, even aunts, uncles, and grandparents, because he or she knows that this child does not exist in isolation, but is immersed in a network of interpersonal relationships between the members of his or her family. These relationships, in turn, obey certain dynamics that are specific to each system, generating invisible but very active laws that largely condition the development of its members. For this reason, when there are difficulties in learning, for example, or when we find aggressive or excessively passive behavior, it is interesting to take this context into account when considering what may be happening. Because whenever a child is entangled in family situations of any kind, he or she is neither available nor open to learn or to relate in a relaxed way. Their whole being is focused on solving the problem at home, obeying an unconscious mandate called loyalty to the system that prevents that child from being free for his or her own development. When we can understand these and other phenomena that occur in the classroom on the basis of this reading, we move away from judgment and demands to accept these situations with respect and humility. It is not the same to feel that a pupil is pulling our leg, as it is to realize that he is overwhelmed and absent because of his family reality. Obviously, their condition does not justify them hurting other people, it will be necessary to set limits to these behaviors. But knowing that the link with the teacher is essential for learning, and that a child can co-regulate his emotional state based on the relationship with an adult, this change of attitude on the part of the teacher puts both in a more open state and with the possibility of meeting. A systemic approach to pedagogy also focuses on working with what is, without living from expectations or should be. If the reality of a person, or the group, is that they are having a hectic day, we can either stick to the schedule and fight against what is happening, or we can welcome and nod to what arises, and go from there to continue our work. This does not mean sitting back and letting the group or the individual act out of that agitation, but is there really any point in denying what is obvious and clinging to what one has been thinking about since home? Context is tremendously important, and if we open ourselves to what is coming to us, we can see if something in particular is going on. Maybe that group has an exam later and they are nervous, maybe there is a conflict in the group and it has not been addressed. Another of the principles guiding this proposal is that everyone has the right to belong to their human group of reference, family, school, etc. This belonging gives them identity and security, and is essential for their development. At school, how can we ensure this belonging? We can pay attention to how the children feel in their group, if everyone is taken into account, or if there are power relations that exclude some members. We can also take this reflection to families. As a teacher, how do I include families and make them feel that they are part of it? And in the teaching staff, do all the teachers, educators, feel that they belong to this center? There are many practices that can concretize these aspects that I am sharing, but what I would like to emphasize is that all these factors, and many others, influence the emotional atmosphere that is generated in a place. The way in which the relationships between the educational team itself, between the educational team and the families, and with the students themselves in the classroom, generate a certain emotional tone in each center, and that tone is the basis and the background of everything else that happens there. It seems that in education we tend to focus on the material, the tangible, what we can all see and marvel at. But the intangible operates as much or more than furniture and pedagogical materials in a child's learning process. Perhaps it is time to take it more into account. Keys to a well-functioning classroom. The importance of conscious communication and listening. Emotional accompaniment as a basis for bonding. A respectful approach to conflict resolution and boundaries through love. The personal work of the teacher as a basic pillar for profound transformation in education. Self-care as a strategy for shared well-being and how to weave the peer support network to sustain the daily work.